Hello, welcome back. This is the second video in the Openem Getting Started series. Next, we're going to talk about getting Toec installed onto an endpoint and seeing if we can do anything useful. All right, so to start, if you want to go and open up the documentation guide and go to Getting Started Client Installation, Toec. You'll see the first topic in there is called Endpoint Provisioning Setup. I'm not going to go through that now, but there's some good points in there to read over, just to understand how endpoints get provisioned into the Openem. So when you get some time, go ahead and read through that. For now, we are going to go right to Generate Toec Installer. That's a pretty simple process. All right, all you have to do is start by logging into your Tomes UI. Let's see if I haven't timed out yet. It looks like I'm good. You're going to click on Admin Settings and scroll down to Toec. Once you're in here, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Client MSI Arguments. If this is blank, that means that something went wrong when you installed the Tomes server. Generally, they configure the Openem section. I think there was 9 or 10 steps in the web interface. Go back and check those out. But if there is something here, then you're generally good to go. What you're going to do is go up to Actions and click on Export Client MSI 64-bit. We'll go ahead and save that file. And I'm going to go to Actions again, export the 32-bit. You may not need 32-bit if you don't have any older systems, but I'll just grab both since I'm here. I'm only going to be testing the 64-bit. Open up my downloads. I will grab my 64-bit here, throw that on my desktop. All right, now I'm going to copy this. This is the actual Toec client. You can call it an agent, all kinds of things. But this is what's going to be installed onto your endpoints. We've got a few VMs running here. Again, here's my server, 2019, and I've also got a Windows 10. I'll paste the Toec client here. And well, let me back up for a minute. It looks like, going back to our documentation, that step is done. It's very easy, just exporting the MSI. So the next step here says install Toec. It actually says install via command or PowerShell. You don't have to do that. You can simply click on this. It's all automated. And there we go. It's installed on this endpoint. If you want to do it through silently through a command or PowerShell, that's fine. Just make sure that your command prompt is elevated to administrator, or PowerShell is also admin, or else it won't work. If you want to double check that it's installed, you can go to your services. And it should be under Toec. And there we are. And it says that it's running. We'll see if it worked. If we go back to our web interface and we click on our computers, there's nothing here. So this brings up the topic of security and Active Directory synchronization. So if we go, this was in the endpoint provisioning guide that I said to read through, by the way. If we go to admin settings and security, there's a couple security options in here. Pre-provision required. There's also new computer provision approval required and pre-provision approval required. Basically what this means is you can't get new endpoints provisioned into the Openem without some type of approval. Right now, out of the box, the way it's set up is it requires pre-provision. If you sync your computers in from Active Directory, they're automatically pre-provisioned and you don't have to worry about anything else. So going back to our computers here, this is actually going to fail. I'll have to go through this again. If I look at approval requests, there won't be any here because I have pre-provision approval required. If you want to manually create a pre-provision, I can do that. Just type the computer's name in here and click add. Most of the time, like I said, you shouldn't really want to do that. The best scenario would be to sync them all in from Active Directory ahead of time. But again, for this demo, let's go and just turn off pre-provision required, but we'll keep new computer provision required. Okay. So what should happen now, the computer should try to provision. It'll sort of go into a waiting list. Let's check out the log and see what's happening. And it tells you exactly right here, client has not been pre-provisioned and the current security policy requires it. And it should try to check in over and over again until it either continuously fails or succeeds. And there we have a new message. Client is pending provision approval. So now that we've disabled the pre-provision, it's gone on to the next step. So if we go check our computers out now, approval requests, there'll be one sitting in there. And we know that we're expecting one, so let's go ahead and approve it. Check the box and then approve request. Now the client will again check in a few seconds and try to finish the provision process. While that's happening, let's go back and visit security one more time. This here, new computer provision approval required. That is why we had to manually approve this. If we were to turn this off, that step would not be necessary. You would run the MSI on the client and it would automatically be provisioned. Very simple. Let's see if this process is finished. There it is, search active. And there we are. So this computer is now in the system. It tells you the last check-in time, last known IP, and the version of the client, and the date that it provisioned. If we go in here to view it, there's not a whole lot of useful information yet. This page here specifically relates to the Theopenem, really nothing that helpful. These tabs here are all going to be inventory based. We haven't collected any inventory yet, so they are not here. There's a couple different ways to collect the inventory. Let's jump back over to the guide real quick and see where we're at. Looks like that's it. The next thing is a first policy tutorial. And it talks about creating your first policy, creating a dynamic group. Let's go ahead and at least follow along with one or two of these and see what happens. I haven't gone through these in a while. Hopefully they're still relevant. So first thing we're going to do is create a dynamic group. So we click on groups. I'll point out to this Active Directory OU browser. I don't have anything syncing in right now, but if you did choose to sync everything in, your entire structure would be listed here and you could deploy policies based on OUs. We'll create a new group and we'll name it, see what the guide says. The guide says to name it all computers. Since this is a dynamic group, it'll be all computers. It'll be dynamic, which means it's constantly changing. Communication server cluster. Remember, we created the main cluster. We've only got one in this case. It also happens to be the default. So no matter what you choose here, default or main, it's going to end up being the same thing. That's just an easy way to leave it as default so you don't have to worry about it. Prevent shutdown. Since we're here, might as well talk about that as well. The Theopenem obviously has the ability to manage almost everything about your endpoints, including rebooting them or shutting them down. If you have computers that you know are very important that should never be rebooted or shut down, you could put them in a group with prevent shutdown on so that no one accidentally shuts them down. Let's go ahead and add this group. Now that it's added, we're going to go and create some dynamic criteria. Click on dynamic criteria. And we're going to set computer name like, and we're going to use a wildcard of %. Now what that's going to do is basically it's just going to grab every computer, regardless of what the name is. It's going to get every computer. And we'll test the query. We should only get one result because we only have one computer. Now we're going to go to Save Dynamic Criteria. And there we are. So basically we've created a dynamic group at this point with every computer. So as new computers get provisioned into the system, they will automatically end up in this group. So the reason for this group, all computers, is you want to tie any policies to it that should run on every computer. So let's create an inventory policy. We'll go over to our menu and select Policies, New. For the name, we're going to type in Collect Inventory. And we're going to run this on a weekly basis. Collect inventory once per week for the description. There's a lot of options here. I'm not going to get into these right now. I'll save those for another tutorial. We're going to change the frequency to once per week. And then we need to pick when we want this policy to run. We want to collect the inventory before. What that means is when a policy runs, there's lots of different steps to the policy. For example, if you're pushing out a piece of software, you may want to run the inventory before you push it out. You may want to run inventory after you push it out. You may not care. You may want both. This particular policy, there's nothing else attached to it other than collecting inventory. So it really doesn't matter, but we'll select before anyway. And then the last thing we want to do is skip server login result. When you're collecting inventory, you really don't care about the result if it failed or passed. With every computer checking in inventory once a week, that's a whole lot of unnecessary logs. And we'll add this policy. And now we'll apply this policy to the group that we just created. So let's see. First, we need to activate this policy. This one we just created, collect inventory. It's going to run on startup or check-in once per week. And let's activate it. And it now turns green, letting us know that it's active. It's not assigned to any groups yet, so it still will not do anything. Now we'll go over to our groups, and all computers group that we created earlier. We'll view that, and we will assign a policy. First, let's check the available, and we have one available. We'll select inventory, and we'll add that to this group. If we check on assign policies, you should see now that we have one policy assigned to this group. You can check out your current group members here, just to verify the policy is only going to run on that one machine. So that's it. This computer now has a policy that has it collect inventory once per week. So what we can do now is wait an hour, or we can tell it to run. Your endpoints are going to check in with the server every 60 minutes. It's probably been about 5 minutes, so about 55 minutes from now it should check in. To tell it to run now, you can click on the computer, select Actions, and we can tell it to check in. Force check-in request sent. Let's go over to the machine and see what's going on here. If we check the log, we can see it's faster than I am. Manual check-in request received. It's checking for policies, and it found an inventory policy to run, and there's the logs from running the policy. If we go back to our web interface, this information should now be filled out. And there we are. It's our inventory for this one VM. So it looks like we have a functioning system at this point. Let's run through one more of these. deploy. The first policy tutorial, number 5, is deploy a software application in MSI format. So here it says making a new group, software deployment test group, static. I'm just going to demo a static group. That's fine. If we go over to our groups, we'll make a new group again. We're going to add software group. Make it static. And we'll add the group. Since this is a static group, by default, there's no members. So you need to add your members statically. We'll add the current provisioned computer. Select modules. Let's see here. Here's our modules. This is where you can create, like I said, you can add software packages, printers, run commands, scripts, copy files, run Windows updates, etc. Looks like in this demo we're going to install 7-zip, it looks like. So we'll make a software module. New. Display name. So you generally want to name this the name of the application itself. Not really the action of installing it. You wouldn't name this install 7-zip because a module doesn't actually do anything until it's tied to a policy. 7-zip 1806. This is really old, so it's probably not actually relevant anymore. And these other options we're going to leave alone for now. And we'll add this module. Now we want to add the file that we're going to deploy. Let's go download 7-zip real quick. Zip. And we want the MSI. There it is, 64-bit MSI. Save that. I'll throw that on my desktop. Go back to the Theopenem. All right, now we want to upload the file. I'll just drag it in here and upload. Right, there we go. Now this file would be in the local storage path that you would set during installation. That's what that's used for. Right, now we need to make a policy that will actually install this software. Let's go back to our policies. New. Now we will name this one install 7-zip, since this policy is actually what will run the action. We're going to change the frequency to once per computer. And we'll add this policy. We'll look at our available modules. We'll see that 7-zip is available. And we'll assign it. And let's go back to our policies and let's activate this. Once again, it's not going to do anything until we assign it to our group. Software test group, assign policies, available policies, install 7-zip. And there we are. So let's check out our computers real quick. So if we go to our desktop and we look at the effective policy, usages. Look at our usages. We can see that it's a member of these two groups. We can also look at all these other options. Let's see what modules are assigned to it. So now we know very easily this computer should be receiving 7-zip. Once again, we don't want to wait another hour for it to check in. So let's tell it to check in now. And let's look at our policy history. Install 7-zip. Success. Let's go over to our VM. Start menu. There it is, 7-zip new. And we've deployed an MSI very easily. And if you look at our log, it should show up in there as well. There it is. Running software module 7-zip 1806. All right, that should pretty much do it for this video. Another thing you could do with the clients, if you want to just, there's a few other things you can force it to do right in here, such as instead of check-in, you could just say, I want to collect the inventory right now. Something changed and I want to collect the inventory. So there'll be no inventory policy needed for that. It's just going to collect the latest inventory. So now if we go to our software, since I just ran the inventory again, now 7-zip shows up in there. All right, once again, that's the end of the second part of this video series. The third video for imaging the computers, hopefully I'll get to that soon. That one's going to take a little bit longer. But I guess I'll see you then. Thanks again.